The night before the wedding, my daughter's fiancé said, "We only want important people." By morning, the $100,000 event was unpaid, and I flew to Dubai. And if, for a second, you feel like this is familiar, I just ask you to like and subscribe. It'll help me keep venting. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd tell. A story that changed me forever and that maybe, just maybe, can change something in you too. It was 10 o'clock on the night of Friday, September 15th in Mexico City. The San Angel restaurant was almost empty. It was just us, finishing up the last details of the tasting for my daughter Jimena's wedding. I was wearing my cream silk blouse, the one I'd bought especially for important occasions, and my hands trembled slightly as I held the folder with all the receipts and contracts I'd been organizing for months. The aroma of cinnamon and chocolate from the Mole Poblano still floated in the air, mixing with the expensive perfume of Jimena and the aftershave of Gael, her fiancé. From my chair, I could see how the candles reflected in my daughter's eyes as she spoke animatedly with the event organizer, her gestures elegant as always, inherited from the etiquette classes I paid for when she was 15 years old. Gael, a 32-year-old man with suits that cost more than my 3-month salary, was checking his phone with that look of superiority that I'd learned to recognize but never question. He worked at an international consulting firm, something he mentioned in every conversation, as if it were a noble title protecting him from any criticism. I'd been organizing this wedding for 2 years. 2 years saving every penny, selling my mother's jewelry, working double shifts at the accounting office where I'd been the most punctual employee for 15 years, but never the most recognized. I'd invested the $100,000 from the inheritance my father had left me, money I'd saved for my old age, because Jimena had told me with tears in her eyes that this wedding was the dream of her life, and that without my help, she would never be able to give it to Gael. "Mom, you know that Dad never gave me anything. You're the only one who can make this happen for me," she'd told me 6 months earlier, hugging me in the kitchen of my apartment in the Roma Norte neighborhood, while I was mentally calculating how I could finance her dreams without drowning in unpayable debts. And I, as always, had said yes, because that's how our family had worked since Jimena was little. She dreamed. I paid. She desired. I sacrificed. She shone, and I stayed in the shadows applauding. The conversation flowed between Jimena, Gael, and the organizer about the final adjustments. The mariachi orchestra that would play during the ceremony in the San Angel church, the floral arrangements of white roses and calla lilies that would decorate the Camino Real Hotel ballroom, the 5-course menu we had tasted that night. Every detail cost a fortune, but my daughter deserved it, or so I'd convinced myself. I got up to go to the bathroom. I needed a moment to breathe. As I walked down the carpeted hallway of the restaurant, I could hear their voices behind me. At first, I thought they were talking about the last-minute arrangements, but then I heard my name. "The truth is, I don't know how to tell Carmen," Gael said with that voice he used when he thought no one important was listening. "But to be honest, Jime, your guests on my side are businessmen, influential people, contacts who can help me with my career. The ones on your side, well, you know." I stopped dead in my tracks. My heart began to beat so hard that I thought it could be heard above the soft music coming from the speakers. "And what do you propose?" Jimena asked, and in her tone, I didn't detect the indignation I expected to hear. She sounded curious, interested. "Look, your mom is incredible, don't get me wrong, but this event is important to me. The partners of the firm are going to be there. Some important clients. We can't have, well, we only want important people in the main photos at the head table. Your mom can be there, of course, but maybe at a table further back, you understand." The floor felt like quicksand beneath my feet. I clung to the hallway wall, trying to process what I had just heard. Important people. I, who had paid every penny of that wedding, was not an important person. "You're right," Jimena replied after a pause that lasted an eternity. "Mom can be a little intense. And you know how she dresses. We don't want her to feel uncomfortable either." Feel uncomfortable. As if the problem were my comfort and not her shame of me. I returned to the table with trembling legs, trying to maintain my composure. They continued talking as if nothing had happened, smiling when I sat down. asking me if everything was okay because I looked pale. "I'm perfect," I lied. While inside, something crumbled like an old building from which the last support is removed. The rest of the evening passed in a kind of haze. I signed the last documents, confirmed the final payments, smiled for the photos that Jimena wanted to take, to remember this special night. But inside, a voice that had been asleep for years began to awaken. That night, I got to my apartment and sat in the armchair where I had spent so many nights calculating budgets for my daughter's wedding. The living room was lit only by the streetlight filtering through the curtains, creating shadows that seemed to dance on the walls where photos of Jimena hung from when she was a baby until her university graduation. I took one of those photos, her at 5 years old, hugging me after her first day of kindergarten, and looked at it for a long time. When had she begun to feel ashamed of me? When had she decided that my unconditional love was enough to receive, but not to show in public? For the first time in 54 years of life, I wondered if I had been living for the wrong people. And for the first time, that question didn't scare me. It excited me. That morning, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until 5 in the morning, going through every corner of my apartment as if it were a museum of my own life. Each object told me a different story, but all had the same absent protagonist, me. In the living room bookshelf, I found the notebooks where I had written down every expense of Jimena since she was 12 years old. The orthodontics, 40,000 pesos. The French classes she never finished, 20,000. The graduation trip to Europe with her friends, 80,000 pesos that I took out from a loan that took me 3 years to pay off. I ran my fingers across the yellowed pages, recognizing my own handwriting, each number written with the meticulousness of someone who never had money to spare, but always found a way to give it all to her daughter. Private university, 180,000 pesos per semester. It's worth it so Jimmy has the best opportunities, I had written in 2010. I worked Monday through Saturday for 4 years to pay for that international relations degree that she had chosen because it sounded elegant and because that's where the classy people went. I got up from the armchair and went to my bedroom. In the closet, behind my work dresses, I found the shoebox where I kept the photos that I hadn't put in frames. I scattered them on the bed like tarot cards, each one revealing a fragment of the woman I had been. There I was at 30, carrying baby Jimena in my arms, in the 2-bedroom apartment in the Doctores neighborhood where we lived after the divorce. My ex-husband, Roberto, had left with his secretary when Jimena was only 8 months old, leaving me with a daughter, a part-time job, and debts that I didn't know how to pay. "Don't worry, my love," I whispered to Jimena every night as I rocked her to sleep. "Mommy is going to make sure you never lack anything." And I kept that promise. My God, how I kept it. There was another photo of when Jimena was 15, at her quinceañera party. I appeared in the background, in a dress I had bought at the Lagunilla market, while she shone in the center in a pink dress that had cost me a 4-month salary. Her friends surrounded her, all dressed as princesses, while their mothers, who hadn't had to sell their car to pay for the party, smiled comfortably from their tables. I remembered that night with a clarity that hurt my chest. Jimena had been perfect, radiant, happy. But when one of her classmates from the private school had asked what I did for a living, she had murmured, "My mom works in an office," as if it were a shameful disease instead of the truth, that I did the accounting for 3 small businesses so I could pay her tuition. I found more photos. Me at Jimena's high school graduation, applauding from the back row because the front seats were for the parents who had contributed the most to the school. Me at her university graduation, smiling proudly while she posed with Roberto, who had miraculously appeared after years of absence, and his new wife, a 30-year-old woman with designer bags and a BMW. "Thank you for coming, Mom," Jimena had told me that day. "But Roberto is going to pay for the celebration lunch. He says it's time for him to do something for me." As if the previous 23 years had been a warm-up. As if all my sacrifices were just the prologue to the real story of her life. I sat on the edge of the bed and took my phone. I opened WhatsApp and searched for our conversation. The last messages were from last week. "Mom, I need you to transfer the last 20,000 for the dress. The designer says that if I don't pay tomorrow, he won't have time to make the adjustments." "Of course, my love. I already transferred it. How are you doing with the last details?" Super stressed. Gail says that his mom wants to change the flowers at the altar because the ones we chose don't match her dress. Can you talk to the florist? Of course. Let me take care of it. You're the best, Mom. Without you, this would be impossible. Without you, this would be impossible. That phrase had filled me with pride when I first read it. Now it sounded different. Now it sounded like what it really was. A declaration of financial dependence disguised as filial love. I scrolled down further in the conversation and found messages from 2 months ago. Mom, Gail and I want to invite you to dinner to talk about the wedding. How exciting! Where are we going? Pujol. Gael got a reservation. Pujol. The most expensive restaurant in the city. I remember that night I wore my only elegant black dress and arrived on time, as always. Gael and Jimena were already there, sitting at a table by the window, studying the menu as if it were an important legal document. Carmen, it's good to see you, Gael had said, getting up to kiss me on the cheek. He always addressed me formally, with that cold courtesy he used with the cleaning ladies in his office. During dinner, while I mentally calculated how much that meal would cost, more than I spent on food in an entire month, they had explained their dreams for the wedding. We want it to be something really special, Mom, Jimena had said, taking my hand across the table. Something we'll remember all our lives. Something that will make Gael proud to marry me. Gael had nodded with that smile that I now recognized as the one he used when he was about to ask me for something very expensive. Your daughter is an extraordinary woman, Carmen. She deserves the best. And I want to give it to her. But well, you know how the economy is. My firm is going through a restructuring and, well, if we could count on your support to make this dream come true. I had said yes before he finished the sentence. Of course, I had said yes. It was the wedding of my only daughter, my princess, the girl I had raised alone and to whom I had promised that she would never lack anything. But now, sitting on my bed at 5 a.m, surrounded by photos that documented a life of total dedication, I wondered if I had confused love with unconditional surrender, if I had raised a daughter who loved me, or one who had simply learned to use me with elegance. I took my laptop and opened my bank account. The balance was desolate. 3,500 pesos. Everything else had gone into that wedding where I wasn't an important person. I closed the laptop and stayed there, in silence, listening to the sounds of the city waking up. The garbage trucks, the first cars, the street vendors shouting their products. Sounds of people working to live, as I had done all my life. But for the first time in decades, I wondered, who had I really been living for? On Saturday morning, exactly 24 hours before the wedding, Jimena arrived at my apartment without warning. I heard her struggling with the keys in the lock. She'd had a copy since she turned 18, and she entered like a hurricane of expensive perfume and anxiety. Mom, we have a problem, she announced, dropping her Hermes bag on my dining table. A bag that I had given her for her 25th birthday, paying for it in 12 monthly installments that had left me eating beans and rice for an entire year. What happened, my love? I asked, leaving my coffee cup on the sink. I had managed to sleep barely 2 hours after my nocturnal session of self-pity with the photographs. Gail's mom arrived last night from Guadalajara. She came with her sister, you know, the one who was married to the owner of those textile factories. Jimena sat in my armchair, the same one where I had spent so many sleepless nights calculating how to pay for her whims. And, well, they want to know all the details of the wedding before the event. That's great, my love. They must be very excited. Yes, but Jimena paused, biting her lower lip like when she was a child and had broken something valuable. They're going to come here in a little while. They want to see the place where I grew up, says Mrs. Patricia. The place where I grew up. Not your house, or where my mom lives. The place where I grew up, as if it were an archaeological site that had to be inspected to understand the humble origins of the bride. Perfect. I'll make coffee and maybe some cookies. No, Mom. Jimena got up from the armchair as if she had touched something hot. No homemade cookies, please. And, do you have something more elegant to wear? Something that isn't, you know. I looked at my housecoat, a blue cotton robe I had bought at Liverpool 3 years ago during a special sale. It was comfortable, clean, decent. But apparently it wasn't enough to receive the aristocracy from Guadalajara. Of course, my love. I'll change. I went to my bedroom and opened the closet. What does a 54-year-old woman wear to be judged by her future son-in-law's mother? I chose a white cotton blouse, the newest one I had, and black pants that I had worn to Mass on Sundays. I combed my hair with more care than I had put in for months, and even put on a little lipstick. When I came out of the room, Jimena was rearranging my living room. She had removed the photographs where we were together in unfashionable places, the Zocalo, Xochimilco, the Coyoacán Fair, and had replaced them with the few photos where I appeared at more formal events. She had also hidden my self-help books and had only left visible the encyclopedia I had bought on installments when she was in high school. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to maintain a neutral tone. "Just tidying up a bit. You know how Mrs. Patricia is. She's very observant." Observant. Another elegant word for critical. They arrived at 11 o'clock sharp. Mrs. Patricia Mendoza de Herrera was a 60-year-old woman with her hair perfectly styled in a low bun, dressed in a Chanel suit that probably cost more than my 6-month salary. Her sister, Amparo, wore more jewelry than a Liverpool display case and shoes that clicked, clicked, clicked against the floor of my apartment like a relentless metronome. "Carmen!" exclaimed Mrs. Patricia, extending her hand to me as if she were the Queen of England. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Jimena has told us so much about you." "The pleasure is mine, ma'am. Welcome to my home." "Oh, what a cozy apartment," commented Amparo, looking around with that fixed smile that rich women use when they want to be polite, but can't hide their superiority. "How long have you been living here?" 12 years, I replied. Jimena finished high school and all of college here. "How strong you are," exclaimed Mrs. Patricia, sitting in my armchair as if it were an uncomfortable throne. "Raising a daughter on your own must be very challenging, especially without adequate resources." Without adequate resources. As if my love and my 23 years of effort were insufficient because they didn't have a Mercedes-Benz attached. "Jimena has been my greatest pride," I said, serving the coffee in my ceramic cups, the best I had, but they looked like paper plates next to the perfect nails of my guests. "It shows that you instilled values," said Amparo, tasting the coffee with an almost imperceptible grimace. Although I must say that I was very surprised to know that, well, that you are paying for the whole wedding. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Jimena turned as red as a tomato. "In our family," Mrs. Patricia continued, "traditionally the groom takes care of those expenses. It's a matter of masculine dignity. You understand? Masculine dignity. As if my feminine dignity didn't matter. As if my years of sacrifice were a humiliation for the man marrying my daughter without paying a cent. For me, it's an honor to be able to give this wedding to Jimena," I replied, feeling my voice tremble slightly. Of course, Mrs. Patricia murmured. "Although I hope you understand that tomorrow, at the event, it will be important to maintain a certain protocol. Gale has very important guests from his work, people he does business with." "Of course," I repeated, although I had no idea where she was going with this. "What my sister-in-law means," Amparo interjected with that venomous smile she had perfected over decades of arranged marriages, "is that perhaps it would be better if you sat at a less visible table, so you can enjoy the party without the pressure of being in all the main photos. So you can enjoy the party, as if I were a second-class guest at the wedding I was paying for." Jimena said nothing. She sat there, studying her perfect nails, done yesterday at the most expensive salon in Polanco, paid for by me, while her fiancé's family explained politely why I didn't deserve to sit at the head table. "Also," Mrs. Patricia continued, "we've thought that perhaps you could wear something more discreet tomorrow, a more neutral color. You've chosen a dress, I suppose." "Yes, I have a burgundy dress." "Oh, no!" Amparo exclaimed as if I had announced I was going naked. "Burgundy is very flashy. Don't you have something in beige? Or gray? Something that doesn't compete with the bride." Compete with the bride. As if a 54-year-old woman with wrinkles around her eyes and gray hair she dyed herself every month could compete with a 25-year-old bride radiant with happiness. "I can get something different," I mumbled. They left an hour later, leaving my house impregnated with their expensive perfumes and their cheap judgments. Jimena stayed a few more minutes, supposedly to help me clean the cups. Mom, don't get angry, okay? They are like that. Very traditional. But deep down, they are good people. I'm not angry, my love. It's just that, well, tomorrow is going to be very important for Gail. His boss is going to be there, some important clients. And you know how this networking thing is. Everything has to look professional, as if my presence was amateur, as if my motherly love was a social faux pas that had to be corrected. I understand perfectly, I told her. And it was true. I understood perfectly. I understood that after 23 years of sacrifices, after working double shifts to pay for the life she wanted, after selling my mother's jewelry to finance her dreams, I was a nuisance on her big day. That afternoon, I went to the Santa Fe Mall. I bought a beige polyester dress at a discount store. It was horrible, shapeless, the color of dirty sand. But it was discreet. It was invisible, as apparently I had to be. That night, as I tried on the dress in front of the bedroom mirror, I saw a woman I no longer recognized. A woman who had disappeared little by little, sacrifice by sacrifice, humiliation by humiliation, until she had become a shadow that bothered the photographs of other people's lives. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt something I had never allowed to grow inside me. Pure, crystalline, honest rage. Rage against myself for having allowed this to happen, and rage against them for having made it possible. On the morning of Sunday, the day of the wedding, I woke up to a WhatsApp message that would change everything. It was from my sister Rose, who lives in a small town in Iowa and barely uses her phone. Carmen, I saw the photos Jimena uploaded to Facebook. Is it true that you're going to sit in the back at her wedding? After everything you've done for that girl. Photos on Facebook? I don't have Facebook, but Rose does. I asked her to send me screenshots. What I saw took my breath away. Jimena had uploaded a complete album titled The Preparations for My Perfect Wedding. There were photos of the decorated hall, the dress, her and Gael toasting with champagne somewhere fancy, and there was a photo of me in the San Angel restaurant, but with a description that broke my heart. With my future family's grandma and my mom finalizing details. What a blessing to have the support of both generations. The grandma of her future family, Mrs. Patricia, appeared smiling and elegant next to us, but I appeared as my mom, without a name, without importance, as if I were another accessory in her perfect story. But there was something worse. In the comments, her friends were asking who had organized such an incredible event, and Jimena replied, Gael and I have been working on this for months. Luckily, Mrs. Patricia is supporting us with the most important contacts. Mrs. Patricia supporting with the contacts. Not Carmen paying every penny. Not Mom sacrificing her financial future. Mrs. Patricia with her contacts. I sat on the bed with the phone trembling in my hands. I kept reading. A friend asked about the floral decorations. Gael has incredible taste. He chose everything, even the colors. He has an impressive artistic eye. Gael chose everything. The same Gael who hadn't given a penny, who hadn't even gone to the appointments with the vendors because he was too busy with work. And the same one who had asked me to sit in the back because I wasn't an important person. There were more comments. Someone asked about the honeymoon location. Dubai. Gael says he's always wanted to see the Burj Khalifa. It's going to be incredible. Dubai. The honeymoon that I had also paid for, using the last 20,000 pesos from my retirement savings account. An account that had taken me 10 years to save, working extra Saturdays and Sundays, denying myself even coffee at the office to save penny by penny. I closed the phone and walked to the kitchen. It was 5 in the morning, and I had to be at the hall at 4 in the afternoon for the wedding. I made coffee with trembling hands and sat at the table where I had planned this wedding for 2 years. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. I wanted to see exactly how much I had spent, penny by penny. I needed to see the magnitude of my own stupidity. Hall and catering, $25,000. Floral decoration, $5,000. Wedding dress and alterations, $8,000. Mariachis and DJ, $4,000. Photography and video, $6,000. Church and religious ceremony, $3,000. Honeymoon in Dubai, $13,000. Rings, because Gael was in between jobs, $4,800. Suits for Gael and the groomsmen, $4,200. Invitations, souvenirs, and other expenses, $6,000. Total, $79,800. Almost $80,000. All my paternal inheritance, my retirement savings, and a loan that I would be paying during the next 5 years of my life, for a wedding where I couldn't sit at the main table because I wasn't an important person. I opened another browser and looked for the contracts I had signed. They were all in my name. All of them. The hall, the flowers, the catering, even the plane tickets to Dubai. Legally, I was responsible for every penny spent. And then I discovered something that chilled my blood. In my Google search history, something strange appeared. Someone had searched from my computer how to cancel wedding contracts and penalties for canceling events 3 days ago. Someone with access to my house. Someone who had keys. Jimena. I checked the complete history. The searches had been made on Thursday afternoon while I was at the office. She had also searched for rights of single mothers in inheritances and how to change beneficiaries of life insurance. My own daughter had been investigating how to get rid of the contracts I had signed and how to make sure my money went to her if something happened to me. I felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach. I got up from the desk and went to the bathroom, where I vomited the coffee and what little dignity I had left. When I returned to the living room, my phone rang. It was Jimena. "Mom, are you awake? What an early bird. Hey, I have to tell you something important." "Tell me," I managed to whisper. "Gael and I have been thinking. You know that we love that you've done so much for us, but we're really sorry that you spent all your savings. So, we've decided that after the wedding, when we get back from the honeymoon, we're going to look for a way to pay you back little by little what you invested. Little by little what you invested. As if it were a bank loan, not a mother's gift of love. You don't need to pay me anything, my love. It's my gift to you." "No, no, Mom. I insist. It's the right thing to do. Although maybe not all at once, because you know how things are economically. But little by little, we're going to pay you back. Well, as much as we can. As much as we can. After having investigated how to cancel my contracts." "Jimena, have you been using my computer?" Silence on the other end of the line. "Why are you asking that, Mom?" "Because someone searched for information about wedding cancellations from my computer." "Oh, that." "Yes, it was me. The day before yesterday, I was super nervous and started to panic that something would go wrong. You know how neurotic I get before important events. But it's over now. I'm super excited. Panic that something would go wrong. Or panic about having to deal with me after the wedding. And what about the life insurance?" Another longer silence. "Mom, are you spying on me?" "You don't do that. I was just organizing my personal papers for after the marriage. It's normal for a married woman to think about these things." "You're right. Forgive me. It's okay. Hey, do you have your beige dress ready? Remember that the ceremony is at 5. We'll be waiting for you there, okay? And Mom, thanks for everything, really. You're the best mother in the world." She hung up before I could answer. I stood there, in my living room, surrounded by the furniture I had bought on installments, the plants I had taken care of for years, the photographs that documented my life of constant sacrifice. You're the best mother in the world. The best mothers in the world, apparently, sit in the back at the weddings they pay for. They dress in beige so as not to compete with 25-year-old brides. They allow themselves to be investigated like criminals and then apologize for realizing it. The best mothers in the world disappear conveniently when they are no longer needed. I went to my bedroom and took the beige dress out of the closet. I spread it on the bed and looked at it for several minutes. It was the perfect uniform for an invisible woman, for someone who had completely forgotten who she was before becoming the official provider of other people's dreams. But for the first time in 23 years, as I looked at that horrible dress that represented everything I had become, something inside me refused to put it on. Something inside me said, "No more." And for the first time in my adult life, I listened to that voice. At 7 in the morning, With the beige dress still spread out on the bed like a shroud, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I opened my laptop and looked up the number of the Grandview Hotel, where the reception would be held. I dialed with firm fingers, without the tremor I had had for days. "Good morning, this is Carmen Davis speaking. I am the person responsible for the Herrera Davis event this afternoon." "Good morning, Mrs. Davis. How can we help you? Any last-minute changes? I need to cancel everything." Silence on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry? Cancel the entire event?" "Everything. The reception, the catering, the flowers, the bar service. Everything is in my name. I'm canceling everything." "Ma'am, the event is this afternoon. The penalties for cancellation at this point would be 100%. You would lose all the money invested." "I understand perfectly. Proceed with the cancellation." I hung up before she could insist on speaking with a supervisor or trying to dissuade me. Next was the florist, then the church, then the mariachis. One by one, I canceled every reservation, every contract, every dream that I had financed with my future. "Mrs. Carmen, are you sure?" each provider asked me. "Completely sure," I replied without hesitation. With each call, I felt as if I were taking off layers of a too heavy clothing that I had been carrying for years, as if I could finally breathe after decades of holding my breath. By 9 in the morning, I was finished. There would be nothing left. No hall, no flowers, no music, no food. Only 200 guests arriving at a church for a ceremony that would no longer have a reception. Then I called the airline. "I want to change a ticket. The flight for tomorrow, Monday, Mexico City, Dubai, in the name of Jimena Delgado. To which destination do you wish to change it?" I closed my eyes and thought of the farthest place I could imagine. A place where no one knew me as Jimena's mom or the lady who pays for everything. Mexico City, Dubai, but in the name of Carmen Davis. For today, the next flight you have available. We have a flight leaving at 2:30 p.m. with a stopover in Paris. Will that work for you? Perfect. When I hung up, my phone immediately began to ring. It was Jimena. I didn't answer. It rang again. I didn't answer. On the 5th attempt, I decided to answer. "Mom, are you okay? The hotel manager just called me saying that you canceled everything. He says there's no reception. This has to be a mistake." Her voice was broken, hysterical. But for the first time in my life, her drama didn't move me. I didn't rush to solve her problem. "It's not a mistake, Jimena." "How is it not a mistake? The wedding is today. There are 200 people who are going to arrive expecting a party. They can have the religious ceremony. That's the only thing I didn't cancel." "But why? Are you crazy? Have you gone crazy?" For the first time in years, I laughed. A genuine, liberating laugh. Maybe I did go crazy. Crazy from being the invisible woman who pays for everything and doesn't even deserve to sit at the head table. "Mom, we talked about that. It was just protocol for shame, Jimena. Shame of me. Of the woman who sacrificed her life to give you yours." "That's not true. I've never been ashamed of you." "Then why did you write on Facebook that Mrs. Patricia was supporting with the important contacts? Why didn't you mention that I paid every penny of that wedding?" Silence. "Mom, why did you search on my computer how to cancel wedding contracts?" More silence. "Why did you investigate my life insurance?" "Mom, I can explain everything." "You don't need to explain anything. I already understood everything perfectly. Please, you can't do this to me. It's my wedding, the most important day of my life, and I'm not important enough to be in it." I hung up and turned off the phone. I went to my closet and took out a suitcase that I hadn't used in years. I started packing, but not the beige dress. I took out my burgundy dress, the one I had bought to shine at my daughter's wedding. I put on my most comfortable shoes, took my passport, and put in the few objects that really mattered to me. Photos of my parents, a necklace that had belonged to my grandmother, some books I had read and reread for years. Everything else could stay. The furniture paid for in installments, the plants I had taken care of, the photographs that documented a life of unacknowledged sacrifices. Everything belonged to a woman who no longer existed. At 11 in the morning, I left my apartment for the last time as the Carmen I had been for decades. I left the keys on the kitchen table along with a note. Jimena, the apartment is paid for until the end of the year. After that, it's your responsibility. The wedding contracts are canceled, but the money I spent is my farewell gift. Use it to learn that love is neither bought nor begged for. It is respected or lost. May you be happy. Mom. The taxi that took me to the airport passed by the San Angel Church. There were already some cars parked, surely family and friends arriving early to prepare the last details. I saw Mrs. Patricia getting out of her Mercedes, dressed to the nines, carrying a bouquet of flowers that she had probably bought to replace the ones I had canceled. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel sadness. I felt freedom. At the airport, while waiting for my flight, I turned on my phone for the last time. I had 47 WhatsApp messages, 23 missed calls, and 12 voice messages, all from Jimena, Gael, and some family members who had found out about the disaster. I deleted everything without reading. I opened a new conversation with my sister Rose. I'm going on a trip. I don't know when I'll be back. Take care. I love you. Then I wrote a message on my WhatsApp status, the first one I had put in years. At 54 years old, I finally learned the difference between being loved and being used. Today, I choose to be respected, even if that means being alone. I'm going to see Dubai. Alone, free, happy. I closed WhatsApp, turned off the phone, and put it deep in my bag. When they called my flight, I walked to the boarding gate, feeling something I hadn't experienced in decades, excitement for my own future. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. And that uncertainty, instead of scaring me, deeply moved me. On the plane, as Mexico got small beneath the clouds, I closed my eyes and smiled. Jimena would have to explain to 200 guests why there was no reception. Gael would have to face his family without the perfect event he had planned to impress his important contacts. And I would be watching the sunset from the tallest tower in the world, toasting the woman who had finally decided to put herself first. The flight attendant offered me champagne. Yes, please, I said. It was my first celebration in honor of myself, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. I landed in Dubai at 11 p.m. local time, after an 18-hour flight with a stopover in Paris. The airport was like a cathedral of marble and glass, with luxury stores selling things I had never allowed myself to even desire. For the first time in my life, I didn't mentally calculate the price of what I saw. I didn't have to save for anyone else's dreams. The hotel I had originally booked for Jimena and Gael, the Burj Al Arab, overlooking the Persian Gulf, greeted me with the courtesy reserved for guests who pay $3,000 a night for suites. The concierge, a young Pakistani man named Ahmad, helped me with my small suitcase without asking questions about why a 54-year-old woman was traveling alone on a honeymoon. Is this your first time in Dubai, ma'am? He asked as the elevator went up to the 25th floor. Yes, and probably the best decision I've made in years. My suite had floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the city illuminated like a giant jewelry box. I poured myself a glass of wine from the minibar without calculating how much it cost, and sat in front of the window. I turned on my phone for the first time in 24 hours. I had 127 messages. The first were from Jimena, from that afternoon. Mom, please answer. People are already arriving at the church and we don't know what to tell them. Father Lopez is asking if you're coming. Where are you? Gael says this is a very cruel revenge, that he never expected this from you. Mom, please answer. I'm crying in my wedding dress and I don't know what to do. Then came messages from family. My cousin Letitia. Carmen, what happened? Jimena is calling the whole family saying that you went crazy. My sister Rose. Are you okay? Jimena says you canceled everything and disappeared. My brother-in-law Alberto. Carmen, whatever happened, this is not the way to solve it. He had always bragged about his basic English. But the messages that caught my attention the most were the most recent, from 2 hours ago. Mom, Gael says he's going to sue you for damages. He says you ruined his professional reputation. Her dad hired a lawyer. They're going to find a way to make you pay for everything they lost because of you. Mom, why are you doing this to me? What did I do to deserve this? What did I do to deserve this? I laughed so hard that I probably woke up the guests in the neighboring suite. I dialed Jimena's number. She answered on the first ring. Mom, where are you? We've been looking for you all over the city. I'm in Dubai. Absolute silence. What do you mean, Dubai? At the Burj Al Arab. In the suite I paid for your honeymoon. Are you crazy? Did you go on our honeymoon trip? I went on my trip, the one I paid for, with my money. But that was our hotel, our reservation. Everything was in my name, Jimena, like everything else. I heard voices in the background. Gail was shouting something about a crazy old lady and legal action. Then he got on the phone. Mrs. Carmen, this is Gail. I need you to understand the magnitude of what you have done. His voice had that false authority that men use when they think they can intimidate women with their professional tone. Hello, Gail. How was the wedding? How do you think it was? It was a total disaster. 200 people arrived at a ceremony with no reception. My boss was there. Important clients from my firm. Do you have any idea how I look professionally after this? And how did I look sitting at the back table so as not to ruin your important photos? That has nothing to do with it. You damaged my professional reputation. I damaged your reputation by not allowing you to use me as your invisible sponsor. Ma'am, you are very confused. What you did it's criminal. Criminal? Canceling contracts that I myself signed and paid for? You caused us economic damages. The people who traveled from out of town, the expenses we made assuming there would be a reception. What expenses did you make exactly? Silence. I'm asking you what expenses you made for this wedding, Gail. Well, we organized, coordinated. You didn't spend a penny, not a single one, but we spent time, energy, dreams. I spent 23 years of dreams. I ran out. Ma'am, my dad has already spoken to a lawyer. We are going to sue you for damages. I laughed again, harder. Perfect. Tell your lawyer to sue a woman who has nothing left to lose. To sue someone who spent her last penny on a wedding where she wasn't welcome. You have assets. Your apartment, your savings. My apartment has been in Jimena's name for 3 years, for tax purposes that you yourself suggested. My savings went into your wedding. I have absolutely nothing. This was a lie, but they didn't need to know. And your pension? Your job? I quit this morning via WhatsApp. And my pension is 3,000 pesos a month. Sue me for 3,000 pesos a month. I heard Gail whisper something to someone, probably to his dad, the lawyer. Mrs. Carmen, he continued in a calmer voice, I understand that you may have felt excluded. Perhaps we didn't handle the situation well. But what you did, it's disproportionate. We can fix things like civilized people. Now I'm civilized people? Because yesterday I wasn't even important people. It was a misunderstanding. I never wanted you to feel... Gail, let's be clear. You wanted my money, not my presence. You wanted my resources, not my company. You wanted me to pay for your perfect event and then disappear discreetly so as not to ruin your photos. That's not true, isn't it? Then tell me, when were you planning to pay me what I spent? Silence. When, Gail? We're going to... Eventually. After the house you're going to buy with the money you got at the wedding that I paid for. After the new car you need for your new married life. After the children you're going to have and who will also need Grandma Carmen to finance them. Ma'am, you're being very unfair. Unfair? Do you think it's unfair that the person who paid 100% of your wedding sits at the head table? Do you think it's unfair that the one who made your perfect event possible appears in the main photos? It was our special day. It was my special money. Jimena took the phone from me. Mom, please, stop with this. We all made mistakes. We can fix it when you get back. I'm not going back soon. What do you mean? That I'm going to stay in Dubai as long as I had planned for you to be there. 2 weeks. And then maybe I'll travel to other places. With what money? With the money I'm not going to spend on you anymore. Mom, I'm sorry. I really am sorry. Maybe we handled things badly, but... Jimena, do you know what hurts me the most? It's not the money. It's that for 23 years I believed that you loved me, when what you loved was what I could do for you. That's not true. I love you. You love me when you need something. You tolerate me the rest of the time. And you're ashamed of me when you have important company. Mom, don't say that. When was the last time you invited me to something without asking me for money first? Silence. When was the last time you proudly introduced me as your mother, without clarifying that I only work in an office? More silence. When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was, without it being because you needed something? Mom. Exactly. Never. I hung up. I turned off the phone and put it in the drawer of the nightstand. That night, I slept better than in years, lulled by the sound of the sea and the certainty that I had done the right thing. For the first time in my life, I had chosen my dignity over their comfort, and it felt glorious. On Tuesday morning, I woke up in Dubai without alarms, without obligations, without anyone expecting me to solve their problems. The sunlight of the desert came through the windows of my suite like a golden blessing. For the first time in decades, I didn't know what time it was, and I didn't care. I got up slowly, without hurry, and went to the window. Below, the city stretched out like a miracle of architecture and ambition, with skyscrapers that defied gravity and common sense. The Burj Khalifa stood before me like a giant needle touching the sky, the same building that Gail had said he always wanted to know. Now I knew it. I ordered breakfast from room service, something I had never allowed myself to do, not even on the few trips I had taken in my life, and ate Eggs Benedict in front of the window while watching the morning ballet of a city that never sleeps. I didn't calculate the price of breakfast. I didn't feel guilty about the expense. I didn't think about how many simple meals in my apartment that luxury tray equaled. I simply ate, savoring each bite as if it were the first time I had tasted real food. After breakfast, I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on my burgundy dress, the one I had bought to shine at my daughter's wedding, and got ready to go out and see the city. I put on makeup carefully, not to look discreet or appropriate, but to look beautiful, for me, for no one other than me. In the marble bathroom mirror of my suite, I saw a woman who had been hidden for years behind the concerns of others and unnecessary sacrifices. I was 54 years old, yes, but I also had bright eyes, a smile that had regained its authenticity, and an upright posture that I didn't remember having since Jimena was little. My first stop was the Dubai Mall. Not to buy things I couldn't afford, but to walk through a place designed to impress, without having to justify to anyone why I was there or how long it was going to take. I sat in a cafe in front of the giant aquarium and ordered a cappuccino, while watching the manta rays glide elegantly behind the glass. A young couple at the next table were arguing about money. The girl wanted Tiffany earrings. The boyfriend explained that they had to be more responsible with their spending. She insisted. He got annoyed. She pouted. He finally gave in with a forced smile. I watched them as if I were an anthropologist studying an unknown tribe. Had it been like that with Jimena and me? Me always giving in, her always insisting. The two of us playing roles that had trapped us for decades? My phone vibrated in my bag. I ignored it. It vibrated again, and again. Finally, I took it out and saw that I had 17 missed calls from Mexican numbers that I didn't recognize. One was from my sister Rose. Carmen, Jimena is desperate. She says Roberto wants to put her in a mental hospital because she's convinced that you had a psychotic episode. Can you please answer your daughter? A psychotic episode. My ex-husband, who had disappeared for 23 years and who now appeared for his daughter's social event, had psychiatric theories about my behavior. A man who hadn't paid a penny of alimony, who hadn't been to a single school meeting, who didn't even know the names of his daughter's friends, was now concerned about my mental health. I dialed Rose's number. Carmen, where are you? Jimena is going crazy. I'm in Dubai, Rose. And I'm perfectly sane. But why did you cancel the wedding? Jimena says you lost all the money. I lost the money 2 years ago, when I decided to pay for it. What I lost yesterday was patience. I don't understand, sister. I told her everything. The conversation in the restaurant, the back table, the searches on my computer, the Facebook where I appeared as a supporting character in the story of my own generosity. Rose listened in silence. Oh, Carmen, why didn't you tell me anything? Because I didn't even realize it myself. You get so used to being invisible that you forget you have the right to exist. And what are you going to do now? Now I'm going to live. For the first time in my adult life, I'm going to do what I want to do. After hanging up with Rose, I blocked all the Mexican numbers on my phone except hers. I didn't want explanations. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want negotiations. I wanted peace. That afternoon, I took a tour of the city. The guide, a Jordanian named Samir, asked me if I was traveling alone for pleasure or business. For rebirth? I replied. He laughed, thinking I was joking. We visited the Jumeirah Mosque, where I took off my shoes and walked on the Persian carpets, feeling a spiritual connection I hadn't experienced in years. I wasn't exactly religious. It was deeper than that. It was the feeling of being present in my own life, of inhabiting my body and mind completely for the first time in decades. Then we went to the Gold Souk, where the merchants tried to sell me very expensive jewelry with the typical insistence of those who see solitary tourists as easy prey. For your daughter, ma'am. For your granddaughter, a salesman insisted, showing me a pearl necklace. I have no daughters or granddaughters, I said with a smile. I only have myself. I bought a simple silver bracelet. Not because it was cheap, but because I liked it. Because I wanted something that was only mine, chosen only by me, paid for with money that I didn't have to justify to anyone. The salesman put the bracelet on my wrist, and for the first time in years, I felt adorned, not disguised. That night, I had dinner at the hotel restaurant. The maître offered me a table for two, in case I was expecting company, but I asked for a single table by the window. A table for a very important person, I said. During dinner, I observed the other tables. Young couples making plans for the future, families with small children negotiating sleep schedules, groups of friends celebrating birthdays or bachelorette parties. Everyone seemed to have places to go, people waiting for them, roles to fulfill. I didn't have any of those things, and for the first time in my life, that didn't terrify me. The opposite terrified me. The idea of returning to the States and becoming again the Carmen who solved other people's problems, who paid bills that she hadn't generated, who apologized for existing in the spaces that her own money had financed. After dinner, I went up to the Sky Lounge on the 27th floor. I ordered a glass of wine and sat on the outdoor terrace, where the desert wind moved my hair and the city stretched out endlessly under the stars. My phone vibrated. It was a WhatsApp from an unknown number. Mrs. Carmen, I am Patricia Davis, Gail's mother. We need to talk. What happened yesterday was very serious and is affecting the name of our families. I propose that we meet when you return to the States to find a civilized solution. A civilized solution. I wrote my response slowly, savoring each word. Mrs. Davis. A civilized solution would have been to treat me with basic respect at a wedding that I fully financed. A civilized solution would have been to recognize my generosity instead of hiding me at the back table. A civilized solution would have been to allow the woman who made your perfect event possible to enjoy it as a guest of honor. That opportunity has already passed. Have a good life. I blocked the number before sending the message. That night, before going to sleep, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at myself in the eyes. Hello, Carmen, I said aloud. Nice to meet you. And for the first time in decades, the woman who looked back at me from the mirror smiled with genuine joy. It wasn't the forced smile I had used for years to maintain family peace. It wasn't the apologetic smile I put on when my existence bothered others. It was the smile of a woman who had just remembered that she had the right to shine. 3 months later, as I write this from the terrace of my small apartment in Barcelona, I can say with certainty that the woman who canceled a wedding in Mexico City no longer exists. In her place lives someone I thought I had lost forever. Myself. After 2 weeks in Dubai, where I climbed the Burj Khalifa, crossed the desert on a camel, and learned to haggle in Arabic, I decided that returning to the States would mean becoming the invisible Carmen again. So, I extended my trip. First Paris, then Rome, then Barcelona, where something in the Mediterranean air and the architecture of Gaudí whispered to me, stay, and I stayed. With the savings I had kept secret, money that Jimena never knew existed, saved for years for an emergency that I never imagined would be my own freedom, I rented a studio in the Gothic Quarter, 40 square meters with windows that overlook a square where street musicians play on Sundays and pigeons take over the cafe tables. It's tiny compared to my apartment in the Roma Norte, but it's completely mine. Here, there are no photos of graduations I couldn't afford, No bills for other people's expenses piling up on the table. There are only books that I read for pleasure, wines that I buy because I like them, flowers that I give myself on Fridays. I got a job teaching Spanish to American and British expats. I don't make much, but it's enough to live without luxury and with dignity. My students call me Professor Davis, with a genuine respect that I had forgotten existed. One of them, Margaret, a retired architect from Yorkshire, told me last week, "Carmen, you have something special. A light that can't be faked. A light that can't be faked." For years, I thought my only light was the reflection of others' happiness. In the mornings, I walk along Las Ramblas with a coffee and a croissant, watching the tourists who photograph every corner as if it were the first time they've seen beauty in the world. I understand them perfectly. I'm also seeing beauty for the first time. Only mine isn't in the medieval buildings or the picturesque squares. It's in the simple act of waking up without anyone needing me for anything. A month ago, I received a physical letter, not a WhatsApp, not an email, sent through Rose, who had found my address. I don't know how. It was from Jimena, handwritten in her perfect private school handwriting. "Mom, it took me 3 months to understand what really happened. Gail and I are getting divorced. It turns out that when you no longer had money to give me, he decided that I wasn't important people either. Now I understand why you did what you did. And for the first time in my life, I am proud to be your daughter. Not because you gave me everything, but because you finally had the courage not to give it to me anymore. I love you, Jimena. P.S. Roberto never asked about you after the wedding, but I've asked about you every day." I cried reading that letter. Not from sadness, but from relief. My daughter had hit her own bottom, and maybe, by hitting it, she had remembered who she was before becoming an extension of my sacrifices. I replied 3 weeks later, "Jimena, I forgive you. But more importantly, I forgive myself for having taught you that love was bought with money and measured in sacrifices. I hope that one day you can visit me in Barcelona, not to ask me for anything, but just to meet the woman your mother became when she decided to live for herself. I love you too." I haven't had a response, and that's okay. Healing processes cannot be accelerated or financed. This morning, while I was having my morning coffee in the square, an 8-year-old boy approached me selling handmade bracelets. He reminded me of Jimena at that age, when she would ask me for money for sweets with that irresistible smile she had inherited from me. "How much do they cost?" I asked him in broken Catalan. €5, ma'am, but if you don't have money, it doesn't matter. My grandmother says that sometimes it's more important to give smiles than to sell things. I bought 3 bracelets and gave him 10 extra euros. "Why?" he asked me. "Because your grandmother is right, and because you gave me the prettiest smile of the week." He ran off to an older woman who was waiting for him on a corner. She waved at me, and I could see in her eyes that mixture of pride and unconditional love that I recognized immediately. But unlike the Carmen of a year ago, this Spanish grandmother didn't seem to apologize for existing in her grandson's world. She didn't seem invisible or ashamed or relegated to the background. She seemed like a woman who had learned to love without disappearing in the process. This afternoon, I'm going to a Picasso exhibition at the National Museum. I'm going alone, as I do everything now, but I don't feel alone. I feel accompanied by the best possible company, a woman who likes me, who respects me, who doesn't sacrifice herself to please others. A woman who wears burgundy dresses because she likes how she looks in them, not because someone else gives her permission to shine. Tomorrow I'm 55. I'm going to celebrate it with dinner at the most elegant restaurant I can find, toasting the woman who was born the day she decided that her dignity was worth more than the comfort of others. I don't know if Jimena and I will ever have the relationship we had before. Honestly, I hope not. That relationship was built on my systematic disappearance, and I have decided to exist permanently and irreversibly. But maybe we can build something new. A relationship between 2 adult women who respect each other, where love is not demonstrated with economic sacrifices, but with genuine presence and emotional support. A relationship where the daughter doesn't need the mother to solve her problems, and the mother doesn't need to be needed to feel valuable. That would be the sweetest revenge against everything they did to me, to prove that it's possible to love without disappearing, to give without destroying oneself, to be a mother, without ceasing to be a woman. As I write these last lines, the sun is setting over Barcelona, and the cathedral bells are striking 6 in the afternoon. In a few hours, the stars will come out, and I will be here, on my tiny terrace, reading a book that I chose, drinking wine that I bought, living a life that I designed. For the woman who would have judged me a year ago, that Carmen who believed that good mothers sacrificed themselves until they disappeared, this would seem like pure selfishness. For the woman I am now, this is the most generous thing I have ever done, because I'm finally giving the world something worthwhile. A complete, whole woman who doesn't need to hurt anyone to exist, but who is also not going to allow anyone to hurt her to make them comfortable. A woman who learned that the greatest betrayal wasn't what they did to me, but what I did to myself for decades by accepting it. At 54, I finally met myself, and it turned out that I like myself very much. Have you ever lived something like this? Have you ever felt invisible in your own life, paying for love that never came, sacrificing yourself for people who took you for granted? If so, leave me a comment telling me your story. And if you liked this story, if it made you reflect even a little on your own worth and your own dignity, give me a like and subscribe to the channel, because maybe, just maybe, this story will reach someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose yourself, that it's never too late to decide that you deserve to be at the head table of your own life.